Power is not a material possession that can be given. Power is the ability to act, and that must always be taken, for no one will ever give that power to you. Those who have power wish to keep it, and those who want power must learn to take it.
Welcome to the Busy Girls Book Club. We are a podcast bringing you reviews, ratings, updates on the internet's most beloved, most recommended books, and we're telling you if they're really good, especially if you're busy like us. I'm Casey.
I'm Catherine.
And I'm Caitlin, and this is week 2 of Spooky Season 2025.
Woohoo!
And so we are back with another sort of fall spooky vibe book that's been trendy. And this one is one that came out earlier this year, but has remained popular, so made a good fall read. And it is Grady Hendrix's Witchcraft for Wayward Girls. And we have done him before. We did Final Girl Support Group as one of our first episodes. And that one was like kind of meh for us, you know, funny, but also like, we're not slasher girls. So it was interesting to dive into this one. And this one is about a home for teen mothers in the 60s, I guess.
I think it's
70s?
1969.
Yeah. 60s, 70s, Vietnam era, you know, hippie movement era. But it was still super taboo to be a pregnant teen. And so teens were shoved away in these homes for unwed mothers. And all these girls are a little bit wayward, hence the title.
Mm-hmm.
And it really goes into huge trigger warnings on, I don't know, bad things happening to girls, you know,
Sexual
rape,
violence.
domestic violence, sexual violence, suicidal ideation, and then like birth trauma. Holy moly.
Self-mutilation.
Yeah, it follows these teen girls who are all in this home together, and they're trying to find ways to reclaim their power. Enter witchcraft.
Of course, sheltering wayward girls since the before times. And yeah, shit gets wild as one might expect.
Mm-hmm.
So do you guys have reviews from the internet?
Yeah, I have one review. There weren't a lot of good one-star reviews, I'm going to say, but I liked like the first sentence of this because I just think this was a funny premise to set this up. And it's on Goodreads. It says, Witchcraft for Wayward Girls has taught me a very important lesson. I can't blindly read Grady Hendrix books without checking the synopsis anymore.
Yeah. I have one, and this one left me with my jaw kind of dropped on the floor, and if you've read this book already, you'll get it. So it's a 4-star review, and it says, okay, who let me read this while 9 months pregnant?
Oh my god.
Oh!
Nope.
Yeah, that's trauma.
There is so much gore. Okay, so pregnancy horror is a niche genre of horror. If you've seen Rosemary's Baby, you've seen it before. But yeah, I cannot imagine a worse thing to read while pregnant because this is so heavy into the pregnancy body horror, like graphic details of traumatic pregnancy. R.I.P. to that woman.
Yeah, this book made me never want to be pregnant, and I never wanted to be pregnant anyway, so solidified it.
Yeah. Ugh.
If you need to like kill baby fever, this is a great choice.
Great choice. Yep.
Yes. I got a 5-star. Actually, I have 2 I'm going to read. The 5-star is short and sweet. This book might have menacing witches and plenty of grotesque scenes, but its true horror lies in the history of maternity homes.
Period.
It's true. It's essentially what I wrote in my review. I said there's a lot of horror in this book, and none of it is the witches. So,
Yeah.
And then one I just liked that I saw kind of repeated thread from women, and I cut off what the rating was on this, but it was a high rating. It says, to be honest, I was skeptical when I read the description and saw the author was a man, especially knowing this book centered on pregnant teenage girls, but I was genuinely surprised by how honest, heartfelt, and real the characters in their stories felt. Grady Hendrix captures not only the struggles of these girls, but also the heartbreaking legacy of maternity homes, the shame, secrecy, and pain that haunted generations of mothers and children Despite being nearly 500 pages, the story moves at a great pace and never drags. I was completely invested and left wanting more from the girls we met along the way. Can't wait to read more from the author.
Yeah.
And I thought there were a couple that mentioned how interesting it was that this was written by a man.
I was very impressed with how he handled the topic and how he wrote a bunch of teenage girls as protagonists.
So if you read the author's note at the back, he did a ton of research and it was inspired because there were 2 women in his life who went to these homes and one reconnected with their child and one did not.
Yeah.
And he didn't find out until much older that this happened.
So he was inspired then to like dive into the research.
Yeah.
And my God, he researched. That man knows how to baby his bird, let me tell you.
Yes, I think this book is a great example of someone doing their due diligence when they're an outsider to the characters that they're writing about, because he wrote some of the most believable and yet lovable teenage girls, and that is part of why, the book is what it is and why I think it's so popular. But that kind of segues right into, what did you guys think?
Whoa, first.
Oh, sorry.
Overall, 3.94 out of 5. Fable, 4 out of 5. Storygraph, 4.04 out of 5. So this is really just right at that 4-star for most people. So where are you guys at?
There we go.
Yep.
I can go first just because why not? I gave the book 5 stars.
Wow. Okay.
I loved it. I think this book fell right into like one of those perfect niches that I love, which is witches who were reimagined in a really unique way. He wasn't just following typical set out lore. I felt like the witchcraft in the book was very unique and clearly built off like fairy tale lore, but became its own thing. So many gray characters, like no villains. Well, there were villains, but not any really pitch black characters and not any pure white characters, which is part of the point of the book, is like purity does not exist. And I thought he did such a good job crafting these gray characters. Like everyone was believable. Everyone was sympathetic in their own way. Even some of the villains were sympathetic in their own way. And I thought it was really sophisticated and it was a really engaging story. I was like sucked into this story the whole time. Because of a little scheduling snafu miscommunication, I had to read this book in one day and I was not upset about it. I was sat and happy the whole time.
Funny, I was reading it thinking, I think the women are well written, but I feel like either like Casey's really gonna love it or she's gonna tell me I was wrong and hated this book.
Yeah, I thought you were gonna hate
it. You're so critical in like a good way of how women are written. I was like, I don't know if this passes her vibe check.
The litmus test, the vibe check.
But
no, this book actually passes the Bechdel test, like with flying colors. Like
they don't talk about men all that much at all.
This book is about women.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
Not about women talking about men. About women talking about themselves.
And their horoscopes.
Women are women even when they're like 14.
You're right.
I gave this 4 stars. I also really liked it. I did expect a little more horror, just knowing Grady Hendrix, but honestly, I was pleasantly surprised. I wanted a little bit more from the witches, but still not mad about it. And I just thought it was a little long, honestly. That was why not 5 stars. And it's definitely not for everybody. I, though, like, couldn't put this down for the most part. And even one night, I was like, I'm just finishing it. And I read until 2 a.m., which I actually am really good about not doing that much anymore. So I was surprised that I was motivated to do that. But still not just like 5 stars to me. It just like wasn't my favorite book in the whole world.
Yeah.
Totally fair.
I'm going to agree with Caitlin for very similar reasons and give it a 4 stars. I loved the history of this book. I was very fascinated by the characters. It was just a little long and the pacing lagged at some points in time. But I was interested enough in the story that I kept picking it back up and putting it back down when I had time. I wanted the witches to be a little more fleshed out because I felt like they played a backseat role at times because of other plot devices, obviously, because these girls are having babies and there's a whole society that's behind those babies. um, so I wasn't mad about that, but I felt like the witches could have been a little more fleshed out.
I think that's fair. Okay, but there is so much to talk about in this book. I'm so excited. Also, not the first book we've read about these types of homes for women who are pregnant out of wedlock. We also read the historical fiction book about Agatha Christie, which revolved around the women's homes. So I thought it was interesting to revisit that idea in the modern United States as opposed to like World War I Ireland.
Yeah.
I forgot. What book?
It was the Christie effect, or like the Christie something.
Christie effect?
Yeah.
Ooh.
In Catherine
That tells you how much I remembered that book. I don't know.
Well, I remembered it. Anyway, is this more plot or character driven?
I think character. This is literally about the girls reclaiming their power.
Yeah.
And the interesting part, the plot is they're stuck in this home. Like, that's kind of it. So
The plot is their impending due dates.
So this is all about like what kind of power can they squeeze out of the world before they become mothers and return to normal life.
Right. I am going to agree. I think this is one of those books that kind of straddles the line. But it's a coming of age story, and coming of age stories are largely character driven because it's about the narrator changing and becoming an adult, becoming disillusioned, losing their innocence, whatever. And that is very much what this book is about, but not just like the loss of innocence, also like how seeing the world for how it is can become a power, and you can see places where you can grab your own power as you get older. So I think it was ultimately character driven because truly nothing in this book had to happen. Everything happened because the main characters made choices that resulted in things happening. So they were the drivers of the plot. The plot wasn't driving them.
Well, yeah, the whole plot was consequences of their own actions.
Other than being pregnant, which...
Yeah. Also consequence of your own actions.
Well, for some of them.
For some of them, yes.
Yeah.
But it's very much so that they make these choices and then it's becoming an adult where you realize that like you have no one to save you but yourself. And if you fuck up, you have to then live with that fuck up and figure out how to fix it. Which was very interesting to watch like 14, 15 and 17-year-old girls try and figure out how to stop impending witches.
Yes.
While also being hormonal and pregnant and not really actually understanding their bodies at all.
Yeah. And also being like banished by their families.
Yeah. To Florida. Ugh.
Yeah. And largely also by their baby daddies. Yeah. Okay. So have you or would you read other books by the author? This is my first Grady Hendrix book. I did not read Final Girl Support Group. That was an episode you guys did with Caitlin Brown or Caitlin, the other Caitlin B.
Caitlin Bartlett.
There we go. But I would totally read other books. I was actually really impressed and liked this book more than I thought I would.
Same. But I've read Final Girl Support Group and I didn't like that one. So this one pleasantly surprised.
It was quirky and it was also subtle horror, more about being a woman, not kind of about being a woman, but it was more slasher.
Yeah. It was true like 80s horror genre.
Well, and the main character was so unreliable, she was irritating. So
yes.
But I mean, it wasn't like bad. It just wasn't my vibe because I got zero of the slasher references because I don't do slasher movies.
Same.
Yeah, maybe I'd like it more because I love horror. Okay. So what about the pacing? This book isn't super short. It's roughly 500 pages. I think a little bit less than that. But also, I feel like something worth mentioning is that the witches don't even really appear until about halfway into the book. And so even though witches is kind of in the title and it is really important to the ending, it's more about the books than it is about magic or witchcraft.
Yes.
So The first half of the book is definitely a lot slower and more based on the characters.
Yeah, I do agree. The first half was the slower pace. The second half is when I had a harder time putting it down. I will also say there were not great stopping points a lot of the time, especially in the digital version. So that's why
No.
half the time I ended up keep reading. It was like well written to make me not stop. I don't know. Yeah, it could have been better paced. It wasn't the worst. It didn't like I read the digital version. It did not feel like it was almost 500 pages, but there were still points where I was like, all right, they're eating dinner, they're cleaning. Okay.
They're on salt restriction.
Like it really had to set it up.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do think it's worth it.
Yes. The setup was very well worth it. I
That's why
can't
it's
think
still
of
4 stars.
yeah. I can't really think of a lot of things to cut from it, honestly, but it was moments of bad pacing, I feel like, in the beginning, just because like I was expecting witches and was expecting something else. And then it took forever to get to the witches.
I
But
will say there were a couple of times too towards like 3/4 of the way, and it got a little jarring when it went off of the main character.
yeah, like
Yeah.
I was like, oh, wait, hold on.
Yeah.
I thought this was about her, and now we're actually.
I was confused who the narrator was for a second. And I was like, wait, what now?
I did not
yeah.
like that. Yeah, I think it should have just stayed with her. But
Yeah, I
Yeah.
understood the reasoning behind it, and we can get into that in the spoilers section. But I
That
mean,
did jar the pace a bit.
it did jar the pace. And that whole moment, there was like, it's a weird moment with the main character throughout that, like the fallout of that. And then like her
Well, it then
being
it keeps doing
annoying.
it, and I was like, oh, we just
Yeah.
totally switched. I guess not, but we did.
Yeah. I needed more of an alert to tell me that this was happening. Anyway, it took me about 4 days to read. So not too bad.
Oh, I think I read it in like 3.
Nice.
Yeah, I read it in 1. So, but I loved it. For me, y'all know I love character development, and I thought the beginning was really interesting, even though it was slow. And then the ending was like jam-packed with interesting stuff.
I
So
don't like character development, and I still liked it. So
Same.
there we go. There we go. Something for everyone. Okay. Would you watch a movie or TV show of this book? Yes, I would be sorry. My enthusiasm is exploding. I would be obsessed with watching like a limited time series of this book.
I think it would be like a fun like Jordan Peele movie.
Ooh.
Ooh, that's good.
I will say I had a really hard time in my head picturing every one of these teenagers pregnant.
Yeah.
So like a part of me is like, I wonder what that really looks like, because sometimes they'd be like, and then our bellies bumped. I'm like, oh yeah, they're all pregnant.
Because they're children.
Yeah, because I'm not picturing children with large baby bumps, like so that
Talking
would
about
be
their
difficult-
horoscopes.
Difficult for
Yeah.
me to picture, so it'd be interesting to see on the screen.
The only reason why I would be hesitant to is just because I don't love gore. So seeing gore on screen would be a lot for me. And I don't want to see a live birth. Like I would rather not pass. No.
Definitely hoping there would be no full frontal shots of that. However, I think this could be great for like a sort of Orange is the New Black method where you kind of dip in a little more to each of the girls individually as opposed to being so centric on the main character.
Yeah.
I like that.
I think that could be really like rich and fun and interesting. But yeah, actually one of the opening scenes in the book when she first gets to the home is her talking about how weird it is to see so many young women pregnant. And I was like, that would be so trippy. That would be so weird. It must have been really weird for the girls itself just to look around and look at all these other children and be like, oh yeah, literally everyone here is pregnant right now. That's crazy.
All using fake names.
Yep.
And then when they leave, they don't come back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
bizarre. Like the summer camp effect times 1,000.
Mm-hmm. It quite literally was a summer camp.
Mm-hmm. It is. Except
there in the
everyone
summer.
just showed up and left at random times.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, now time for the busy girl rating. What do y'all say?
I'm going to stick with my 4. because I do think this is a very niche book, but I think it's well worth it to learn about this history because even though it's a horror book, it is true history. Like this did happen to young girls, not the witchcraft part, but the maternity home part.
You don't know that?
Well, I don't know that. Actually, that would be so sweet if there was the witchcraft part, but the one that we
You
know
never
about,
know in Florida in 1969.
you are so right.
If you've heard about a Florida man, you'll shake at the idea of a Florida woman. So
Oh my God. But yeah, so I'm going to stick with my 4.
I actually want to give it a 3, not for like quality, but for, like I said, I gave it an overall 4 because of pace, so I'm already at a 4 there. I would say 3 because I think a lot of people would be deeply disturbed by the graphic pregnancy horror of this book. It's not for everybody. Like that's where it loses another busy girl star for me, is like this is not for everybody. There's a lot of people who won't like this book.
yeah, I think that's all fair. I think I'm going to go down to a 4 for me. I do think it's a little long to be like the perfect busy girls book.
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of a long weekend, and so I had time, and I don't know how I would have felt if I was busier trying to read this. I feel like this book is so interesting that it's actually a little frustrating to read when you're busy. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's definitely well worth the read, but I agree it's not for everyone and it's a little bit long. So that's my rating.
Okay. Well, we've teased a lot about pregnancy, horror, and witchcraft. Are we ready to get to the spoiler section?
Hell yeah.
Yes, of course.
All right. Well, let's start with something we've already kind of talked around is what do you think about the historical fiction part of this book? The true, based on true historical homes. And how much did you like know about them? Do you feel like you learned a lot?
So I knew about these homes largely because of the book we read earlier in the podcast. However, I did not realize how modern they were. Like they really were a concept and were up and running like well into modern history. And I kind of thought of them as more like that kind of World War era, especially more so in Catholic communities. And this book really introduces the fact that this was a lot more widespread than that and also was happening into like the 1970s and 1980s, which is kind of scary. I didn't know that. So I still learned a lot reading this.
Yeah, this is where it really helps to have boomer parents. And my mom was the one that made us read The Christie Effect. So
Affair.
I had heard about these homes since I was a kid because my mother would tell stories about how she was in high school and girls would disappear for months on end and then show back up. They seemed a little pudgy and then they would disappear to their aunt's house and then like 6 months later would show back up at school and everyone's like, "Oh, they had a kid." But they don't talk about it because they don't talk about those things. And she went to Catholic school in Michigan, so kind of tracks that way. So yeah, no, my mom had friends that went to, or not friends, had people she knew that went to homes. Even if they wouldn't say they went to homes, they all knew they went to homes. And that was, I mean, she was born in 57. So she was in high school in the 70s, 60s, late 60s, early 70s.
Damn.
So
Quick side note, there is a line in the book that made me laugh out loud when the main character is like, if you don't have any aunts, I don't know what they tell people.
yeah. No, because that's literally my mom was like,
Yeah.
yeah, and you're
Yeah.
going to your aunt's farm or something like ridiculous, like, or you're going to theater camp, like something really stupid. Like it's just like, yeah, that's not where she went for 3 fucking months. Like, and then what happens when it's not on summer vacation? Anyway, so I knew a lot about these maternity homes because of my mom's personal experience, not in one, but witnessing adjacent stories about it in one.
Right.
I didn't know a lot about them. I don't know if I ever like knew explicitly that they were a thing, but like, I knew they were a thing. I knew it was super taboo, teen pregnancy. And the more you tell kids not to do it, the more likely they're going to do it. And that was the time period. So, I'm sure there are plenty of these girls, and it's still taboo. I remember a girl in 8th grade like disappearing to another school for a long time, and I don't know, it's still really taboo. It was weird when there was a girl who was older than me in high school, and she came to school very pregnant the whole time, and we were all kind of like, "Whoa, okay." Not about. It was just surprising because most people don't do that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it was definitely interesting because I know that my school district dealt with it by you had to go to an alternative
Yep.
school.
Yep.
So there's
Apparently
still
you didn't have to.
right. There's still sort of a version of this happening that I think we should probably be suspicious of, where pregnant girls are removed from the general population, which I think is very sad.
Almost as if they're
Um,
contagious.
Right. Like, if anything, seeing a pregnant girl my age would have made me even less likely to be doing those activities because of how scary that seems.
Oh,
Yep.
this girl at one point grabbed my hand and stuck it on her belly so I could feel her baby kick, and that was the best birth control that could have ever happened to me.
I would have been horrified.
Um,
I was like 17. I was like, huh?
yeah. Actually, on that point, it's not only the adults telling them not to do something, it's the adults not telling them anything at all. And so girls ended up in these scenarios with boyfriends who they thought they loved and thought loved them, and didn't even necessarily really know what they were doing, and that they would get pregnant from it, which is kind of wild to think about in the modern era. But this is before the internet, so they didn't really know what was going to happen.
Like the girl who was like, I took a pill every time we did it, a birth control pill. And the other one was
Yeah.
like, you dumbass, you have to take it all day, every day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Rose is like, you have to take it at a specific time every single day for multiple days, and it doesn't have effectiveness until like 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
Right.
And she was just like, I thought I was so smart. And she was book smart.
She
and
was trying.
she absorbed all the information she got, but that shows how little information she received and how they were completely kept in the dark, and the lack of birth control options, the lack of a sex education. And then in the author's note, they talk about how these homes kind of disappeared after the inaction of Roe, and how that was now an option, a legal option for teenagers to utilize. So I am curious now that Roe has fallen, and Roe has fallen, but many states have now created these kind of bans. I'm curious to see if a version of these homes start popping up. I don't know if they're legal, but I don't know.
Here's where as someone who grew up hardcore into purity culture, I think the fact that the internet exists and kids and adults are much more willing to talk about this stuff actually is the best way to keep a low teen pregnancy rate, or just like unwanted children in general. The more you know, the less likely it's going to happen. So I actually think, I don't know, there's still enough like open conversation. My guess is there would not be any of these homes now.
Yeah,
I feel like teens are a lot more plugged in these days and
that's true.
know more.
Also, to be honest, the thought of like the insurance liability alone of having
true.
like 20 pregnant teens under your care, and pregnancy is still very dangerous. Like, don't get it twisted. Like, it's still the hardest thing a human body can accomplish. And these women are too young for their bodies to be ready for the trauma that they're going to endure, which is something the book touches on heavily, is how the pregnancies went poorly, partly because of the time period and partly because of discrimination, but also because they're literal children doing something that grown women are hardly strong enough to do.
Now, I will say, while I don't see those kinds of specific homes like you're saying returning, but there are still, like, I know here in Kansas City, there are a lot of resources and even like some homestay areas for young mothers who are single and maybe unhoused and just need some help. So they still do exist. I know my church has a ministry where they like throw baby showers for young single moms.
Aw.
They're supposed to go through like a class first. So like they help them get on their feet, but also they're kind of shoving like the church thing down their throat. So like who knows how good it really is. But like, so it's still a thing, sort of.
Right.
And I mean, all they were being taught was scriptures at that school. Like they weren't being taught anything in the home. Like it was
Right.
just like how
Yeah,
you were
even
just
when they get
dirty.
there, they're just like, you're a terrible person and we're going to torture you so you don't do this again.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Also, the fact that all their lessons were about homemaking,
Yeah.
because the whole thing that they were telling these girls the whole time was like, if you give up your baby, you'll get to be a real mom someday. You'll get to have a husband and the white picket fence, but you have to give away your baby first, because if you do have your baby and you want to keep it, none of that will happen for you.
Yeah.
Also, trigger warning for the kind of bulk term of coat hanger abortion attempts.
Yeah.
All pretty probably historical.
Drinking
Um,
bleach and Lysol and
Turpentine,
throwing
Yeah.
yourself downstairs.
douching yourself.
Yeah, which makes it clear, like the one her mom helped her do that. Clearly, moms don't know how it works either. But
They
yeah, like
used to do that.
every piece of the history of this was sort of incorporated.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. All that aside, there is magic in this book, even though it's sort of weirdly in the background for most of it. What did y'all think of the magic?
I found it very realistic, actually, because it was all about power structures and who has power, who doesn't have power, and can you take power for yourself? And that was basically rooted in the whole system. Is like these girls had no power. They had their bodily autonomies kind of taken over by this home because they're expected to give up these babies. And then they're being forced to do chores, forced to do labor, being monitored by this male doctor who's being really creepy and gross about things and like undermining them at every turn. But this magic system gave them a chance to see power, but at the same time, it had limitations where it said, like, you can only give up so much before it comes back to you. And you have to experience pain in order to fully see your magic come to fruition. And so I liked that there was that aspect of there are consequences if you dare take this path. And definitely the witch, Mrs. Parsay, being a cult leader essentially, and was very much so manipulating these young impressionable girls. But at least she was giving them knowledge. So like, it's manipulation with a golden spoon, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought this was really sinister in its own way. Like the way these girls were looking for freedom and were manipulated into something else, and like the things they had to do to gain the power. And also just like the carnalness of the witchcraft itself was like it all just gave this kind of subtle, like sinister simmering feeling. I did like though, especially how it kind of emphasized like 3 is stronger than 1, 5 is strong, like the strength of what they were trying to do actually came in just like talking to each other. Not even necessarily in the witchcraft. It was like them uniting.
Yeah, it's a coven's just a group of women.
Right. So the covenness of it was the cool moral of it. But it was kind of sinister. And I didn't like how, we'll get there, but we didn't get a lot of resolution to the witch thing.
No.
Yes.
And that gave it that sinister, like it remained sinister, looming kind of in the shadows.
I am glad you brought it up because, so first of all, I loved the magic in this book. I think this book is definitely horror. Like it definitely accomplishes the genre, requirements. But also this book, I think one of the reasons I liked it so much is that it feels so fairy tale to me, like very grim horror, very original concepts of witchcraft, like right down to like the very traditional kind of rituals to create the spells. And I thought that was just really vivid and interesting to me. So I loved that. But I also loved the more modern twist that I felt came from acknowledging that being a witch has always really meant being independent and not obeying society. Like us reading The First Witch of Boston for our first spooky season book, there were a lot of parallels because that book is all about how being a witch actually just meant being independent and not doing what society wanted you to do. And
Men.
this book, even though magic was real in this book, it was the same thing. Magic was really about just deciding that you did not want to live by society's rules anymore and you wanted to be independent. And I have a really conflicting concept of the fact that it stayed in the background, because I agree with you, Caitlin, that made it feel very sinister. And I feel like the witches are very gray characters that we never fully understand. And I think part of that is really great and really well done, because then you never get that feeling of total release. You never can fully relax. There's always parts of you that's wondering and like waiting for something else to happen, which is like very horror. But I'm also like, but I was so interested in them that I wanted to learn more and I wanted to get more answers about, are they good, are they bad, even though I know that they're just not meant to be good or bad. You know, they're witches and they do good and bad things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is like the magic that I wish we would have gotten in like The God of the Woods or History of Wild Places.
Yeah.
That kind of sinister, very natural magic. And so this, I was like, okay, I've been waiting for something like this.
Well, I mean, to sign on to become a witch, you had to like forsake God and forsake men. That's what was like the two requirements, was just like you have to denounce society essentially to join our coven. And that was that was required. And then like cut yourself. And it's a very easy, simple thing at the time. Then it spirals down because, you know, they had their own agendas and their own wants and needs.
Their own due dates.
Their own due dates, yes.
Yeah. I don't know. I wanted a little bit more from the witches, but also, like, you're right, the horror of it comes in the fact that we don't get more.
Yeah.
But also, I liked the witches, so.
I wanted, like, more of the separate witches.
We barely met the coven. Yeah. I wanted more coven. That's what I wanted.
I wanted more periwinkle.
Because in a traditional novel, they would have been the villains. And in this book, in a traditional novel, they would have been the villains. In a very feminist sort of new age take of this book, they would have been the heroes. And I think what this book did was really, really smart and realistic, which is give us neither villains nor heroes, just people who are also enacting their own will.
Okay, if we're already kind of talking in that direction. Mm-hmm. However, at the end, the younger members of the coven give up really easily and are like, who cares if the line of Hecate is passed along? And I was like, ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But I liked it because they basically decided that they didn't want to be another abusive power structure.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Like their leader,
another, like the young ones versus the old ones, like new age, new thinking.
Right. Because the older one was essentially grooming young women, which was really interesting because she's manipulative and enticing.
Cult leader.
Not fully a villain, but also definitely like kind of a villain. And
really passionate about her work.
She's a villain.
She becomes a villain for sure. But I don't necessarily think that her motives were villainous.
No.
But it's the rest of the tribe that keeps her in check and says, no, we don't want to be like regular society that enforces our will upon others.
I will say I was going to give this book a 1 star if they made the witches the villain, because in the middle of the book, it seemed like it was heading down that path where it would make the witches the villains. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? These girls need something to grasp onto. They need something that is going to take care of them. And then it towed the line so beautifully and so perfectly that I brought it back up to 4. But I was getting very nervous there because I was like, we are not going to be weaponizing women, and we're not going to be villainizing them for being women and make society seem so nice. And I'm like, fuck Miss Wellwood, fuck them. They got what they deserved.
Okay, but you get to, we're only on like the second question, so I'm going to jump ahead. Let's talk about the side characters like Miss Wellwood, specifically Miss Wellwood, who is painted as the head villain of the home. But then you find out she was one of them once. And you're like, well, I can't even hate you all the way now.
I can still hate you.
Okay, so another thing that this book did that I thought was really sophisticated is I thought he also towed the line really well with the women and the people who dealt with the girls on a day-to-day basis in the home, because they were doing objectively bad things. Like they were definitely more to the villain end of the spectrum, but you also could kind of understand their motivations. Like they really did think that they were doing these women a favor. They really thought that, like, look, if you keep your baby, you will be a pariah in society. You won't be able to provide for your baby the way an established couple will be able to. If we make you do this essentially now, you will get to live a happy life. And the book shows why that's a logical fallacy. Like, that's not really true. But also, it's like, even though they were doing really hateful, mean things, like, their intentions were good and they didn't treat the girls poorly on a day-to-day basis. Like, they were well taken care of. They were doing what they thought was right to...
They had a lot of freedom, really.
Right. Yeah. And so they're not good characters, especially because they let Holly be shipped back off. But also, they're not really villains either.
No.
That's what I wanted to argue. At one point, Catherine, you said the doctor was, like, creepy.
Yeah.
He wasn't creepy, actually. He didn't do anything slimy. He was just abrasive and didn't explain anything to the girls as he did it. But he really was trying to keep the babies healthy. He just could have done it a lot more nice.
The thing, is the reason why I say creepy as the, like, identifier of him is because I'm putting modern standards of medicine and care for your patients into this, because I do think you have to get consent before sticking your hands up someone's private parts.
You didn't back then, though.
Yeah, but, like, yes, so that's why I say creepy.
Also, they were children. Their parents gave the consent.
Sure. But the idea of this man treating them like vessels, treating them like idiots and morons because they got pregnant, and not explaining any of the medical
them like
procedures.
Children and not like women.
Yes. And if you are pregnant, I feel like you need to be treated with a level of respect, because you are going through something that is very traumatic already. And especially if you know nothing about your own body, like, you need a doctor to explain some of these things to you. So that's why I say
like
creepy.
Sexually abusive.
No.
Kind of creepy.
No, it's never the creepy side where it would be
He sucked, though.
in prison. Yeah.
Yeah.
He deserved to throw up a ton. Learn a lesson.
Other side characters, Hagar was my favorite.
I love her.
Yes.
Love it. Also, Hagar and Miriam are names of women in the Bible who had central storylines that involved infants.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cute.
I also really love the reference to root magic.
Yes, which we read about.
Yes, I think the last book we read that included root magic was that YA book.
Legendborn or whatever the first one is.
Legendborn.
And so I really liked the inclusion of it in the story. I think the side characters made this book. Like, that's ultimately why I loved it so much, is because every single side character was as three-dimensional and complicated as the main character.
Yep.
And there are a lot of side characters, so that's saying a lot for the book. Like, there were some girls that weren't as involved as others, but, like, the main group of girls, super complicated and fleshed out. The two women who were helping them, who were the midwives, super fleshed out. The people who ran the home, super fleshed out. The witches, in their own way, fleshed out. Like, it was just so much. And I think he really, disturbingly, for a man, managed to capture the essence of girlhood, which is just being complicated and confused and, like, bearing the weight of the world, but also, like, finding so much joy and safety in other women. And it was just beautiful.
Yeah. And I just thought it was, like, super fitting. In the Bible, Miriam is Moses' sister, and everyone knows Moses got put in the basket and floated down the Nile River so Pharaoh's daughter could find him. Miriam is his sister that watches him to make sure he's safe as he's floating down the river. And I was like, they are, like, they're guardians of these girls, but the girls are, like, the babies, you know? They're looking after the girls. Well, and I was like, that was good naming, Grady Hendrix. I got that. I don't know if everyone got it, but I was like,
I did not get that, but that is really good naming. And I also think
Hagar is The one who Abraham, when Sarah could not have kids, she's Hagar's slave at the time, and she says, "Take my slave Hagar to have a son." And she produces Ishmael, who's not like the chosen one, but is still honored by God. And that's where Muslim and Christianity split. Muslims follow Ishmael's line, Christians, Jews follow Isaac's line.
Fascinating.
Anyway, like both really central. That's so nerdy of me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I love like theology and stuff, but
No, I love that. That's
Love
so,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
so like blessed women who protected children.
Yeah. And I mean, Hagar's a really interesting character because she's really trying to stay out of trouble because she is a Black woman in the South and well knows that she will get blamed if shit hits fan.
But she's not gonna let anyone hurt these baby girls.
Yes. But she's like, I'm not going to let them hurt you. And I found it so interesting because, like, obviously Holly didn't want to tell her story anymore because she told it to so many adults who ignored her and didn't believe her because she was this feral young girl. Why would they ever believe her? And then there's this enigmatic, like, leader, reverend, which we've seen a lot of people in the clergy abusing young children. Unfortunately, we've seen that time and time again. So it was written really well in that sense. But like Hagar, when they finally told her, like, here's the situation, she was the one adult who believed her and said, I can't be the one to be seen helping you, but here is a way forward. And then she confronted Miss Wellwood and said, did you know? And when Miss Wellwood couldn't meet her eyes, she realized Miss Wellwood knows and believes that this happened, but is still letting society go on with this. And that's when she says, I can no longer be supportive of this if you are going to let this little girl go back to her abuser. And I was like, oh my God, you have my heart, Hagar. Like you have such my heart.
Yeah,
I do
love them.
Yeah, there was also a lot of really deep commentary there about what abusers get from women because this pedophile in the church was abusing Holly and then wanted to become the father of her baby when it was against her will. And then he could keep abusing her and then raising her child with his own family. And I was like, this.
And the chilling
potentially
part was
abusing
when
the child.
she said, and one day my little girl will be 8. And I was like, that was like the most powerful line. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah. And that's why they had to put it all on the line.
And there's the horror, not the witches. It's that.
Yes. Okay. So we've talked a lot about the other characters, but what did you guys think about the main character who is Neva/Fern?
I was thinking about this, and she's actually got like the least interesting backstory of all of the girls we meet, which I think is on purpose. Like you have to have kind of that placebo to put all the others against. You know, she's the norm. She just fooled around with a boy, and her parents don't want to be seen. Then you've got the others who, you know, they all have a sort of different background that gets them there. Holly's being by far the worst, but
Right.
she was kind of the most vanilla one, but was still really fun to follow.
Yes.
Yeah.
I refer to her as an NPC, but
That's a great
lovingly, lovingly an NPC, just because I think she was meant to be like the true average. Like out of teen pregnancies, she was 15, which is, you know, a child, obviously, but it's at that age where you're experiencing your sexuality. So it's not unheard of for a 15-year-old to be sexually active.
Mm-hmm.
And she was with someone that she cared about. You know, it wasn't like a horrific story. And she kind of had like an average middle income family. And I think that was very much on purpose and also a smart choice because it allows her to discover the other women in a way that is very similar to how you're discovering them.
Mm-hmm.
And she was very well read and knew the importance of learning and reading. And she was a very voracious learner, which makes it very interesting when all of this goes down.
What's the theme of every book we ever read? Knowledge is power, and the people who have power don't want you to get it.
Yeah.
Right. Also, she reminded me of Tom Lake's main character, which is being an actor and kind of having like a discovering her youth, like tragic era. So I hope we kind of know what happens to her because of the epilogue, but I have love for her in my heart.
I'm glad she became a doula in the end. I think that was hopefully healing for her to help women be empowered to have their own natural birth stories in the best ways possible.
Which, like, honestly, that reminds me of another book, Local Woman Missing, the doula, whose like priority was to make sure women had a say in their birth story.
Yeah.
Right.
And I love that we've had a little theme of just like women reclaiming their power in all forms in all the books we read.
Yeah.
Yeah, the actual scenes from the hospital were enough
Oh
for
my
me
God.
if I'm ever pregnant, I will be
You're
having
experiencing that, and then the witch keeps popping up. I was like,
Yeah.
oh my God.
Because you were just waiting for the witch to find her because they took off her necklace. I will
They're
say,
cutting open her, you know, and now
Yeah.
the witch is here, and what?
I will say that was the one time I was okay with the point of view change, because I knew that they knocked women out in that time period in order to have the kid, which is a horror story in and of itself.
Wild.
And facts that during that time when the women were knocked out, they had procedures done to them that were not on the forms, were not given by consent, even hysterectomies. If you were a woman of color in this time period, especially Hispanic women in LA, that is what happened, is they would have their kid and a hysterectomy without their consent, or tubal ligation, anything. Which is fucking wild. But the one time when the point of view changed and the doctor was talking about like giving the episiotomy because it was necessary, to be fair, to let the baby out, but then sewing it back up.
Forceps that is now not really a thing, but is still slowly making its way out of medicine. I'm like, the forceps thing. I can't.
The forceps, and then tightening her back up because she'll enjoy it later. I'm like, oh no, that's still a thing that doctors sometimes do.
Well, the forceps thing, like so many, well, they talked about Local Women Missing. So many children are like mentally disabled because of, or physically disabled because of the forceps thing. I'm like, so all of it, reading it as a woman, I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah. Also the quote unquote husband stitch, where they stitch you tighter because they think that will make more pleasure for your husband in the future.
And that still happens.
And like, I know how birth works. So a woman reading this, it's very different. Like,
yes.
Yeah, it was described so well that in my head I was seeing all of it. And I was like, like that was graphic. So as a woman who knows,
that it was,
a man reading it's probably like, ew. And as a woman, I'm like,
it was more levels of horror than I can ever describe.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is the horror of all horrors.
And knowing a lot of that stuff still happens. And also the added layer of horror of these poor girls' ignorance, where they had no idea what was going to happen. Like, at least we all know what the birth process is. We know what the medical terms are. They had, some of them, they say in the beginning of the book, don't even understand that the baby is going to come out of their vaginal canal. And I was like, that is so disturbing to me.
Well, and then you get, after this, Fern comes back and is like, they knock you out, doesn't hurt at all. She starts parroting what all the adults have said to her because she went through hell and just has given up.
Yeah. And there's no words. Like, how do you condense that experience into words?
Then she's just parroting the adults, and you're like, what the heck, Fern?
Yeah, Fern just gives up on Holly. Like, there's nothing you can do. Like, society is society. You're never going to get out of it, because she just had the most traumatizing experience.
And everyone gave up on her.
Yeah.
Right.
She lost the baby she thought maybe she did want to keep, and she said, what's the point anymore?
Well, and then them manipulating her, saying like, okay, then you'll have to pay for all your hospital bills. Is like, whoa.
Crazy.
Which, $2,000. And then what is it now? It's like well into the six figures.
Yeah, I think it's 52,000 average.
Yeah, I know women who have had well over $100,000 in like birth billing.
Because of NICU stays and stuff like that. You never know.
It did also make me so mad. I think the author did a really good job of showing and not telling you the way their autonomy was continuously violated through this process. And part of it was also how meanly they were treated. Like, they don't know what's happening to them. They're in extreme amounts of pain, and people are ignoring them. Like, because they're pregnant out of wedlock, people felt like they were trash and they could just be talked to and treated in any way. And it was really heartbreaking to read. And the point in the book that was actually my favorite part was that kind of depression period for Fern, because I felt like it just impacted me so deeply emotionally. Like, reading it was so hard. Like, it really had the emotional resonance he wanted it to have, because you understand why she just can't fight anymore. And you're so sad that society took that from her.
And like, even if you don't want your child after having a child, the hormones pumping through your body post birth, especially with like creating milk and stuff, like, yeah, this 15-year-old girl doesn't want to see pregnant girls and she doesn't understand why. Like,
Yeah.
no one told her that's why they removed them, but like, she doesn't understand. These are my friends and I do not want to be around them.
Yeah. Because like you lactate every time someone cries.
Which
Like,
she still never really figured out. She's
No.
like, it pinched behind my breast. I don't know why. I was like, oh, you poor thing.
you're lactating, sweetheart.
Poor girl. I do want to talk about, we've hit on a lot of stuff, and we kind of talked about the end a little bit, and that we don't get a big resolution from the witches. However, the ending is crazy. There is this whole thing with Holly, the Great Escape. They bring her back to the home. They unleash the storm.
Yeah.
And the storm destroys Wellwood House and takes out the Reverend and all this crazy stuff. So the home is destroyed. Girls don't have to stay there anymore. Fern goes home. Holly joins the witches. And that's sort of it until the epilogue. What did you think? Because I was like, whoa, hold on. And that's why I was reading at 2 a.m.
Yeah. No, it was quite the escalation of events. I mean, it was very interesting. Because Zinnia never gave up on Holly, and she was trying to find non-witchcraft related ways to help Holly. Even though there was naivety to it, it was still truly from a good place.
She finally just gave in and gave her to the witches, though.
Yeah. And then them going to Hager's house and being like, yeah, we need help. I mean, it was so heartbreaking when Fern was like trying to help, but then like Hager's like, what the fuck are you doing? No, we're not going to shave her. No, she's not going to not feel anything. She's going to feel fucking everything. Like, cause she just truly had never experienced an actual birth because she
did it like 3 days ago. Yeah.
She was completely knocked out and her autonomy was taken away from her. And so she never experienced it. And then she realizes that like, while it was a horrifying experience, it was also a beautiful experience that she never got to have with her baby Charlie Brown. Which
Bald and nobody wants him.
Yeah. Which my cat's name is Charlie Brown, so I giggled at that every time I on the page.
But that's like a child's understanding of having a child. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah. I loved the ending, and I loved how extreme it became. Like, the ending of this book, I think, is roughly how I would have guessed it would end. But the journey of getting from point A to point B, did not guess any of it. Like, it made just twists and turns and unpredictable characters and unpredictable events. And it was, honestly, it was thrilling. I mean, it was really a page turner at a certain point there. So I was really satisfied with it. And I think it became very fantastical without being unrealistic somehow. So the ending I thought was very realistic and very emotional, and I liked that.
Well, beyond the storm in the bottle.
But. Right. Except for the one girl who disappeared with the witches, but you know.
Yeah.
And who just turned up to drop a ring at Fern's baby's home.
Well,
years later or whatever.
She also did. Yeah, she did get her revenge where she made the Reverend say all of his crimes out loud, which I loved. That was great.
If only we had a wand to wave over every mega church.
Yeah, seriously.
People are starting to get them, okay?
We hope.
There's been a couple.
Yeah.
Another Dallas I love.
Yeah. Oh, man. So, yeah, I don't know. Caitlin, anything to add? I thought it was also very poetic that Wellwood House was destroyed. Like, that part felt like a true resolution.
That
like,
had to happen.
Institution is gone now.
Yeah. No, I liked the end. I liked the epilogue even.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some people found their kids, some didn't. Holly's still a witch. And Rose has a lesbian compound with her child and her grandchild now.
That all look like her.
Yeah. So I was like, all right, slay.
Yeah.
Pop
When,
off, queen.
Her never remarried and had kids because she was so traumatized from that experience. And I think that's a very realistic way
But
to
I
write.
love that her nephew went with her.
Yes. Very
Yeah.
realistic way to write the end. I liked
Yeah.
it a lot.
yeah. It was very bittersweet, which I thought was the right tone.
Unrealistic that the lesbians were in Arkansas, but okay.
Yeah.
I was waiting for another Montana mention.
Yeah.
Then it
I was like,
really would be
Arkansas,
like
all right.
on women. Yeah.
That's an Arkansas neighbor. Nah.
Oh my goodness.
LOL.
I wish they would have heard from Holly. That's what I wanted.
Yes. I wish they would have heard from the witches, especially
It
because
needed to be the mysterious ending, but I
Yeah.
wanted to know more.
well, because like the witches rose up against Miss Parcay and said, we will not contribute to this cycle of violence. So I wanted to see what they did with themselves afterwards.
Again, I want to know if Holly was able to accept the line of Hecate and became a powerful, badass woman.
Yeah, her and her daughter.
Yeah.
I think her being alive still means that did happen. That's at least
assume.
how I took it. Like, they fed us enough details that I was satisfied, but never fully satiated.
Correct.
All right. Well, I think that's it.
That was long. There's so much
yeah.
to talk about. We didn't even touch half of it.
No,
Yeah.
we didn't even look at the questions the whole time.
Well, we did cover everything that was in the questions.
Right. Good job, Catherine, on the question.
I mean, there's a lot to talk about in this book.
I was excited to talk about this one. This
Same.
would be a really good women's book club book, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Great book club book. But on that note, do you guys have any book recommendations?
No.
I guess I'm just going to recommend like a horror-esque book that has to do with women. Because that's about it. All I can come up with at this moment. Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil.
Yeah.
It's kind of a coming of age in a sense, and women reclaiming their power. And vampires.
True.
I want to recommend, I don't know why, this kind of made me think of Mexican Gothic because it's horror that's not horror,
Yeah.
Like it's just this tension building, and that's kind of what the horror is.
Right.
I don't know. They gave me kind of similar,
Grotesque.
and a house being a central character almost. Yeah, also grotesque. No cannibalism in Witchcraft or Wayward Girls.
Right.
Just self-mutilation.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I have a very random recommendation, but I'm going to recommend I Who Have Never Known Men.
Great.
Basically, yeah, because it's a very weird book. It's very sci-fi fantasy, and it's also horror-esque, but very similarly, the horror comes from just a lot of building tension and unknowns, which I think was a big theme in this book. So I think if you liked this book, you might give I Who Have Never Known Men a try.
Which has actually been our most popular of our recent episodes. Fun fact. Surprisingly.
So glad I made y'all read it.
Yeah.
I was down for that one. I saw
Same.
it turn into.
Yeah.
It has gained way more interest than I thought it would on
Yes.
our stats.
That pleases me.
Mhm.
All right. Well, these are just our opinions, our recommendations. We'd love to hear from you guys, especially our favorite month of the year, spooky season, which we always go so hard on reading our witchy little books. So let us know what you thought. Also, rate and review this episode, please. 5 stars. We love you. And if you do want to tell us your opinion, you can do so at Busy Girls Pod pretty much anywhere, and at our website, busygirlspod.com.
Guys, we answer all our DMs, emails, and comments. We love hearing from you. So
Yes.
drop us a line. Read this one and tell us what you thought. We know most of you out there are women, so we'd love to hear your thoughts. But that's all for today. I'm Caitlin.
I'm Catherine.
And I'm Casey. Thanks for listening. And when you get a chance, take a break with the Busy Girls Book Club.